Well, the YouTuber who illegally traveled to one of the most isolated islands to leave behind a Diet Coke and some miscellaneous items somehow avoided prison and then uploaded the footage anyway. Now, the big question is though, was it worth going to jail in India for over a year for this video? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Personal opinion, no, I don't think so at all. But remember Mikhailo Polyakov, the YouTuber who spent 9 hours in a tiny inflatable boat trying to reach one of the most isolated tribes on Earth just so he could leave behind a Diet Coke and some items. Well, somehow this story has gotten even more ridiculous since we last talked about it, because after getting arrested in India and facing up to 5 years in prison for illegally landing on the North Sentinel Island, Polyakov basically got away with it, except for the fact that he was, kind of in a Indian jail for a year, it seems like. But other than the year in jail, it seems like the punishment for this was about 15,000 rupees, which converts to roughly $161. I mean, that is less than a speeding ticket in the US, but obviously the big punishment here was the year in jail. But the guy essentially ignored all the laws out there to protect himself and the tribe. Obviously, any disease that hits that tribe will probably wipe it all out. And people are being protected here because this tribe tends to greet its visitors with like a whole barrage of arrows. So visiting this island is basically a guaranteed lose-lose situation. But apparently authorities also reportedly ordered him to surrender the footage from this trip, but he still managed to upload the video online anyway. So I mean, he did a year in jail. I guess it makes sense that he's trying to get the footage up, because or else it would absolutely not be worth it whatsoever for him. I still don't even think it's worth it for him. But I guess the question is it worth going to jail for this footage? But honestly, I mean, after watching his video, I'm sitting here like, wow, this is one of the craziest examples of main character syndrome I've seen in a while. I mean, hey, it's pretty simple. The laws are essentially like, hey, please don't go visit that uncontacted tribe. They don't want to be disturbed. And he's like, yeah, let me just go be Christopher Columbus and I'll pull up and I'll give them a Diet Coke. Why? For a YouTube video.
What you're about to see has never been publicly viewed before and was recovered after being seized by authorities later that same evening.
So right now I'm off the northeast corner of North Sentinel Island.
When I was apprehended for unauthorized entry into a restricted tribal reserve.
Dude, you're sitting in a tiny rubber dinghy in the middle of open water talking about how you're going to be studied in the future. This is some historical event. No, dude, the only thing that would be studied in the future is the stupidity involved in doing this, especially if something happened to you or the tribe because of this. Like, dramatic music is playing, he's filming cinematic shots in the ocean, and he keeps talking about civilization and history like he's going to make first contact with them. But he's not even the first person to make contact with them, so he's not doing a first here. This entire video just does not make sense.
What you're seeing right there is North Sentinel Island. I would say something witty right now, but this is a strong contender for the longest day of my life, so I'm gonna spare the words for now. This is the northeast corner. And then down there, southeast corner, you can see Constance Island. So the goal, introduce this Paleolithic tribe to modernity and history. By giving them this Diet Coke, I will move them ahead 10,000 years. No, 30,000.
Dude, I'm actually kind of like shocked at like how stupid all this is. I mean, obviously I could picture how it all went down because like we've been covering the story for over a year, but like, come on, dude. Honestly, I'm just kind of speechless. Like, this is such a unbelievably like internet brain sentence that it almost sounds fake. The dude genuinely looked at one of the last isolated human populations on Earth and thought to himself, you know what would advance their civilization? A Diet Coke. I mean, clearly he sees himself as some sort of explorer by the way he talks about himself in his videos, but still, dude, this was not worth going to jail in India for a year over.
Check in, say what's up, give him a Diet Coke, end history, all in one day. I'm gonna do a light binocular reconnaissance. I don't wanna be too reckless here. That's not my MO. We do things as carefully as possible here on this channel. Like, look how far I am from these cannibal tribes. I mean, that's called risk management right there.
Okay, so wait, his version of the risk assessment is to try to stay far enough from the island to avoid arrows they shoot at people. Okay, I mean, his version just sounds like he's trying to take all this so seriously and do this big grand exploration, but remember, according to police, he spent around an hour blowing a whistle trying to get the tribe's attention before briefly stepping on the island. Then of course, he left behind a Diet Coke and a coconut, and I guess he collected some sand samples and filmed footage and then left. So after months of planning, multiple failed attempts, and a 9-hour journey across open water, his big historic achievement was basically littering a can of Diet Coke on this beach. Congratulations, dude. And then, of course, he was immediately arrested as soon as he got back to India. Now, to be fair, as we covered in my last video on this, people have been fascinated with the North Sentinel Island for years. It has become internet mythology at this point. Like, the place is completely off limits and almost nobody has ever interacted with the Sentinelese tribe directly. So naturally, somebody turned that into content. Am I surprised? Honestly, not too much surprises me anymore. Sometimes it does though, but this doesn't really surprise me. But I guess what makes all this so much worse is this wasn't like some impulsive stunt or he randomly woke up one morning and he's like, maybe I'll go visit this tribe. No, this was a fully planned thing. And he apparently attempted the trip multiple times before this. One attempt involved an inflatable kayak, and another failed earlier journey happened just months before, which honestly makes this entire thing feel less like a dumb exploration video and more like a genuine obsession. And I guess the craziest part is he absolutely knew the history behind the island before he even went there. So it very much seemed like he knew what he was getting into and what laws he was breaking to do it. Like, even in the first half of his video, he was yapping about how this would be illegal. And of course, in the start of his video, he also mentioned John Allen Cho, the American missionary who illegally traveled there in 2018, believing he was going to convert the Sentinelese into Christianity. And unfortunately, they took his life. He was met with that whole barrage of arrows. And authorities were so concerned about provoking the tribe further that they ended up giving up on trying to get his remains.
John Allen Chow, with the assistance of some sympathetic local Christians, found some fishermen that would take him. And in official documents I secretly obtained during my time in the Andamans, the details are eye-opening. Pages and pages of never-before-seen details on the case that captivated the world, including the very location he was buried after having been murdered by the Sentinelese.
But even outside this case, there's a long history of violence surrounding the island. In 2006, 2 fishermen drifted too close to the North Sentinel Island, and it's safe to say the tribe got them. Then after a 2004 tsunami, one of the only signs the Sentinelese had survived was because of a tribesman appearing on the beach and firing arrows at a helicopter that came to check on them, which honestly sends a very clear message of what's going on. These people do not want visitors whatsoever. And somehow, despite the laws and despite the exclusion zone, Polyakov still looked at the situation and thought, yeah, let me go give them a Diet Coke. It's just very tone deaf. And at one point, he even started talking about seeing trash washed up alongside the shoreline. So he was using that as like an excuse that he could leave a Diet Coke there, and saying because there was some trash on the shoreline that they've been exposed to the modern world, which is literally just trespassing and then justifying that you're trespassing because you see litter outside. Like, what?
What I found is that this isn't the unspoiled Eden many assume. The sea edge, you can see a myriad of waste, evidence of the modern world drifting in from the Bay of Bengal. In recent footage I reviewed in circumstances I cannot disclose, the Sentinelese were seen putting plastic waste to use as containers for water, waste that has informed them of our customs in the outside world.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that really stood out to me was how casually he talks about all of this afterwards, because after, the backlash, Polyakov started defending himself in interviews by saying that he was vaccinated against the flu and measles and never intended to come into direct contact with the tribe. And then he followed it up by saying, as far as I know, you can't catch diseases simply by looking at each other.
I never intended to meet them up close, and I never did. To my knowledge, there is no disease that can be transmitted by simply looking at someone. A strict no-contact policy towards isolated tribal groups remains a minority position among academic anthropologists studying these people. Please defer to those with subject matter expertise and not bots on the internet.
Which kind of misses the whole point of why these laws exist in the first place. Nobody was worried about the Sentinelese catching a disease through eye contact. Like, pretty sure the concern here is that, most isolated populations have almost zero immunity to outside illnesses that regular people barely even think about anymore. Like, even direct exposure can be dangerous. That's why the Indian government has spent decades creating exclusion zones around the island and restricting contact. Like, why do you think he was arrested on the way back? And again, all of this was over a Diet Coke. This is somehow a worse rendition of the whole Kendall Jenner delivering a Pepsi for that commercial. Come on. It's just so arrogant and tone deaf, which is why Survival International came out and absolutely blasted Polyakov after the trip happened. The organization called the stunt reckless and idiotic and warned that it put both Polyakov and the Sentinelese people at risk. And I guess after watching the footage, the craziest part is the Sentinelese people, they never appear. The tribe completely ignored him. Like, there's no dramatic interaction here. And clearly, he was trying to make contact because it's not like his boat was quiet whatsoever. And apparently, according to authorities, he was blowing a whistle for an hour outside of the island. So I don't know what that's about. But regardless, it seems like he got a year in jail waiting for his trial. And I guess when his trial was finished, he got a fine for about $161. So was all this worth it? Personally, I don't think so. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Peace.